Motorsiklo sa South Korea nilamon ng malaking sinkhole sa daan.
Nagsagawa naman kaya ng rescue mission ng mga otoridad para iligtas ang biktima. Alamin po natin ang iba pang pangyayaring ibabahagi maya-maya. Magandang gabi. Ako po si Ricky Mathay.
Ako si Nina Richie Alago Flores. Ito ang mata ng Agila International. Para naman sa mga headlines ngayong araw ng Martes.
Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. tinawag na katang-isip ang 10-dash line claim ng China.
Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr. pinahintulutan ang pagsisimula ng negosasyon para sa Visiting Forces Agreement sa France.
Egypt nagsulong ng bagong peace proposal para muling buhayin ang Gaza troops.
Dalawang prefecture sa Japan apektado ng wildfires.
At K-pop girl group na NJZ nag-anunsyo ng kanilang hiatus.
We have to just keep going at this pace, but that doesn't mean we're going to give up.
Tinawag pong katang-isip at malaking kasinungalingan ni Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. ang 10-dash line claim ng China sa bahagi ng West Philippine Sea.
Ayon sa kalihim, tanging ang Chinese Community Party o Communist Party lamang ang naniniwala sa kanilang katang-isip na ito.
No ASEAN country accepts the legitimacy of that 10-dash line because that is the biggest fiction and lie that can be sold.
Maging ang Armed Forces of the Philippines hindi bilib sa claim ng China. Anila isang malaking biro ang pilit na pag-angkin ng China sa West Philippine Sea.
It is a joke designed merely for entertainment purposes. It is absurd, no legal basis. It is beyond normal imagination. Take it as a joke.
Binigyang diin ni Rear Admiral Roy Vincent Trinidad ng Philippine Navy noong 2016 nang kinatiga ng Arbitral Tribunal na pagmamayari ng Pilipinas ang naturang maritime territory. Anya, hindi rin makatotohanan na pag-aari ng Beijing ang Palawan.
We have a lot of international jurisprudence that would support the stand of the Philippines. We have the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal ruling. We have our Constitution. It is very clear that Palawan is part and parcel of our archipelago. Pronouncements like this by a foreign power should be taken with a grain of salt.
Ayon naman kay Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary Claire Castro mismong si Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr. ang nagkumpirma na wala pang talakayan ukol sa muling pagsali ng Pilipinas sa International Criminal Court. Umatras ang Pilipinas mula sa ICC noong taong 2019 matapos itong simulan ng investigasyon sa kampanya laban sa droga ng dating o war on drugs ng dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Kamakailan naglabas ang ICC ng warrant of arrest laban kay dating Pangulong Duterte dahil sa mga kasong crimes against humanity. Sinabi ni Marcos na legal ang naging pag-aresto kay FPRRD at iginiit na iginagalang ng Pilipinas ang mga kasunduan nito sa Interpol. Kasalukuyang nasa kustudiya ng ICC ang dating Pangulo at nakatakda ang kanyang confirmation hearing sa September 23.
Binigyang diin ang anak ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte na si Veronica Kitty Duterte na hindi pa moot o may saysay pa rin ang insinumite nitong writ of habeas corpus sa Korte Suprema na humihiling sa korte na atasan nitong gobyerno na ibalik sa Pilipinas ang kanyang ama. Posible pa rin anya ito kahit na nga nasa kustodiya na ng International Criminal Court o ICC sa The Hague sa The Netherlands ang dating Pangulo. Sa isinumiteng traverse ng kampo ni Duterte sa Korte Suprema ay inulit ng petitioner na hindi dapat pahintulutan ang mga respondent na makatakas sa extraordinary writ of habeas corpus sa pamamagitan lamang ng pagsasabi na ang dating Pangulong Duterte ay wala na sa kanilang kustodiya. Ayon kay Kiri, nananatiling iligal na inaresto at idinetena ang kanyang ama dahil walang jurisdiksyon ng ICC sa Pilipinas. Kahit walaan niyang jurisdiksyon ng Korte Suprema sa ICC, ay nasa ilalim ng jurisdiksyon ng Korte Suprema ang mga opisyal ng pamahalaan, kaya maaari silang utusan na ibalik sa bansa ang dating Pangulo. Paliwanag pa ng dating presidential daughter sa kanyang traverse, to allow the same would be to reward the respondents for their illegal and unconstitutional actions and their deliberate attempt to evade judicial review. Kaugnay nito ay tumanggi nga magkomento ni Justice Secretary Crispin Remulla sa bagong pahayag ni Kiri, sub judice anya o nasa korte na ang nasabing petisyon, kaya hindi anya mabuti na magkomento ukol dito.
No comment muna. Kasi nga, ano nga yan sub judice, I think we should respect the metes and bounds by which we will hear the cases in the Supreme Court. So it's not good to comment on these matters. But it's a news item. If they give you a pleading and it's a news item, you can report on the news item. But for me to comment on it is not proper.
Nais ng Pilipinas na palawakin ang isang informal squad security alliance ito kasamang India at South Korea sa gitna ng tumataas na tensyon sa Indo-Pacific region. Nakatuon ang nasabing alyansa sa pagpapanatili ng kapayapaan at katatagan sa rehiyon at pagbabantay sa sinasabing panggigipit ng China. Ang Squad Alliance ay isang impormal na security group na kinabibilangan ng Pilipinas, Estados Unidos, Japan at Australia. Nabuo ito noong taong 2023 sa Singapore na sinundan ng isang pagpupulong sa Hawaii noong 2024 na pinangunahan ni dating US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin.
Umapela ang palasyo ng Malacanang sa mga overseas Filipino workers o OFW sa Europa na maging mahinahon at huwag magpadala sa emosyon. Ito'y matapos lumabas ang ilang ulat na may ilulunsad na global campaign ng ilang grupo kung saan ay hindi magpapadala ng pera ang mga OFW o zero remittance mula March 28 hanggang April 4. Ito raw ang nila ay bilang pagpapakita ng pagpalag sa pagkakaaresto kay dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte.
Of course, mas gugustuhin po natin na maging mahinahon ang bawat Pilipino sa ganitong klaseng issue. Sana po ay malaman din po nila na ang pamahalaan at ng gobyerno ay tumutupad lamang sa ating batas. At may mga Pilipino rin naman po na nagreklamo, nag-file ng complaint laban sa dating Pangulong Duterte. Sana'y maging patas din po sila sa kanilang pananaw para po maibsan ang anumang pwedeng kahinatnan ng kanilang gagawin. Pero siyempre po, kung hindi po sila magkakaroon at hindi sila magre-remit ng kanilang mga maaaring ipadala sa mga pamilya nila, hindi lamang po gobyerno maapektuhan, pati ang kanilang mga pamilya. So, sana po ay maging mahinahon tayo sa ganito mga klaseng issues.
Muli namang nagpaalala ang Department of Labor and Employment sa mga employers ng private companies ukol sa wastong pagpapasahod sa mga empleyado nila sa darating na holidays sa susunod na buwan. Batay sa ibinabang memorandum ng ahensya, itinalaga bilang regular holidays ang April 1, April 9, April 17 at 18. Ibig pong sabihin, epektibo rito ang double pay rules. Samantala, ang April 19 naman ay isang special non-working day o ibig pong sabihin, epektibo naman rito ang no work, no pay principle maliban kung may hiwalay na company policy ang isang kumpanya o employer na nagtatakda ng sweldo para sa espesyal na araw na iyon.
Pinahintulutan ni Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr. ang mga negosasyon patungkol sa Visiting Forces Agreements o VFA sa France. Kinumpirma ni Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary Claire Castro na itinalaga ni Pangulong Marcos Jr. si Defense Secretary Gilberto Chodoro Jr. na simulan ang mga diskusyon ukol dito. Ang VFA ay isang kasunduan na itinatag upang payagan ng militar ng isang bansa na mag-operate sa teritoryo ng isa't isa. Sa pamamagitan nito ay maaaring magkaroon ng exchange of ideas patungkol sa military operation ng Pilipinas at ang France. Sa kasalukuyan, mayroong VFA ang Pilipinas sa Estados Unidos, Japan at Australia. Samantala, ikinakasa na rin ang isang defense pact kasama ang New Zealand at Canada.
Magsisimula sa April 7 hanggang April 18 ang taunang war games sa pagitan ng Philippine Air Force at ng counterpart nito sa Estados Unidos. Ayon kay spokesperson Colonel Maria Consuelo Castillo, ang Cope Thunder 25-1 ay isasagawa sa Hilagang Luzon upang mapanatili at mapaunlad ang relasyong panseguridad ng dalawang puwersa. Layon din nitong war games na ito na itaguyod ang interoperability ng mga operasyong panghimpapawid at panglupa. Magkakaroon ng pangalawang iteration ang Cope Thunder 25-1 sa darating na Hunyo.
Inanunsyo ng PHIVOX sa publiko na walang tsunami threat na itinaas sa Pilipinas matapos ang magnitude 6.8 na lindol na tumama sa New Zealand. Sa isang advisory, tumama ang lindol sa west coast ng South Island sa New Zealand bandang 9:43 a.m. May lalim na 10 kilometro ang lindol ayon sa PHIVOX. Tiniyak ng state seismologists na walang epekto ang lindol sa Pilipinas. Susunod, 88 sugatan sa airstrike ng Russia sa Ukraine.
US journalist na add sa group chat ukol sa Yemen airstrike.
At relasyong Estados Unidos-Canada, taripa iniisip ng mga botante sa Canada. Mga balitang yan at iba pang mga balita sa pagbabalik ng Mata ng Agila International.
This portion is
ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba, sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa new era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Binigyan din ng China na kahit kailan ay hindi interesado ang Beijing na mangialam sa internal affairs ng Canada. Ito'y matapos ihayag ng Canadian Security Intelligence Service na posibleng mangialam ang China sa eleksyon ng kanilang bansa sa darating na Abril 28 sa tulong ng Artificial Intelligence o AI.
中方一贯坚持不干涉别国内政的原则，从未也没有兴趣干涉加拿大的内政。
Bukod sa China, sinabi rin ng spy agency ng Canada na posible ring mangialam ang India, Russia at Pakistan. Itinanggi rin ng India ang paratang ng Canada habang hindi naman nagbigay ng reaksyon ang Moscow at Islamabad.
Naniniwala naman si Acting President Han Duck-soo ng South Korea na may ripple effect ang digmaang pangkalakalan sa mundo. Sa isang cabinet meeting, inamin ni Han na nakararanas ng ang kanilang bansa ng pagbagal ng ekonomiya at inflation na siyang nakakaapekto sa mga may-ari ng maliliit na negosyo. Gayunpaman ay tiniyak ni Han na gagawin niya ang lahat upang tugunan ang bagyong dulot ng US tariffs. Binanggit din ng opisyal na ang mga prioridad ng gobyerno ay nakasalalay sa pagbibigay proteksyon sa pambansang interes.
지금 이 순간 우리의 소명은 국민의 안전을 지키고 통상 전쟁으로부터 국익을 확보하며 국회와의 협치를 통해 당면한 국가적 현안에 대한 해법을 조속히 마련하는 것입니다.
Samantala, sinabi ng Estados Unidos na tiwala ito sa demokratikong katatagan ng South Korea at kumpiyansa ito sa pamumuno ni Han. Muli rin itong ipinahayag ang pangako nitong makikipagtulungan ng White House sa gobyerno ng South Korea. Sugatan naman ang 88 katao matapos magpalipad ang Russia ng missile sa syudad ng Sumy sa Ukraine. Ayon kay Regional Governor Volodymyr Artyuk, kasalukuyang nagsasagawa ng search and rescue operations sa mga otoridad upang makumpirma ang pinal na bilang ng mga casualties sa pinakabagong pag-atake ng Moscow. Sa ngayon ay may iniestimang nasa 88 katao ang sugatan kasama sa bilang ang 17 kabataan. Sa ngayon din po ay inililikas ang mga residente ng naturang lugar sa mga air raid shelters upang iwasan pa ang pagtaas ng bilang ng mga apektado laban sa mga paparating pang-atake ng Russia. Kasabay ng pag-atake ng Russia ang pagpupulong ng mga opisyales ng Russia at Estados Unidos sa Saudi Arabia upang pag-usapan ang mga posibleng hakbang patungo sa tuluyang tigil putukan sa gitna ng Ukraine at Russia. Ipinahayag naman ni Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky ang kanyang pakikiramay kung saan sinabi nitong hindi kailanman ito napaghandaan o ginusto ng Ukraine.
Зараз в Сумах ще триває рятувальна операція. Всі служби залучені, ДСНС України, Національна поліція, медичні служби, наші комунальні. Дуже багато постраждалих станом на цей час. Відомо про майже 90 постраждалих людей. 17 дітей серед них. В епіцентрі є школа, житлові будинки. На щастя, діти в школі були в укритті. Я вдячний усім, хто допомагає людям і всім, хто рятує життя українців. Сьогодні представники Сполучених Штатів Америки говорили з командою війни, з представниками Росії. Після того знов зустріч української та американської команд. Я очікую також і нової доповіді. Нам потрібен рух до реального миру, до гарантованої безпеки. І це нам потрібно усім. В Україні, в Європі, в Америці, усім в світі, хто хоче спокою в міжнародних відносинах.
Umapela si Trong My Lan, isang Vietnamese property tycoon, sa korte matapos itong matalo sa $17.7 billion money laundering case. Hinatulang guilty ng korte silan matapos mapatunayan ng prosecution team na nagnakaw ito ng pera sa Saigon Commercial Bank. Umabot sa $24 billion ang nakolekta nitong pera mula sa kanyang mga naloko. Ngunit ayon kay Lan, dapat ay bawasan ang sentensya sa kanya ng korte. Paliwanag naman ng hukom, walang basehan ang depensa ni Lan at maaaring maiwasan itong death penalty kung maibabalik niya ang 75% ng kanyang mga ninakaw.
Naglaan naman po ng $1 billion Australian dollars or that's $628.3 million ang gobyerno ng Canberra sa defense spending nito. Ayon kay Defense Minister Richard Marles, nais silang bumilis ang pagdevelop ng mga armas ng Australia.
And having the $10.6 billion over the forward estimates greatly enhances our ability to see GWIO happen in the here and now. And that is not about manufacturing guided weapons sometime in the never-never. It is about commencing the manufacture of guided weapons in Australia this year. it will see us be able to accelerate the purchase of the general purpose frigate into our surface fleet, which will see us take possession of the first of the general purpose frigates this decade, one of the fastest acquisitions in our Navy's history.
Binatikos ni Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan ang mga kilos protesta laban sa pagpapakulong niya kay Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu.
İstanbul merkezli bir yolsuzluk operasyonunun ardından ana muhalefet partisi genel başkanının yaptığı sokak çağrısı sonrası ortaya çıkan ve kısa sürede şiddet hareketine dönüşen olayları milletçe ibretle takip ettik. Marjinal örgütlerin ve şehir eşkıyalarının saldırıları sebebiyle 5 günde 123 güvenlik görevlimiz yaralandı.
Sa isang talumpati ay binansagan niya ang naturang protesta bilang isang movement of violence na naglalayong idestabilisa ang kanilang mga bansa o ang kanilang bansa. Dagdag pa nito ay dapat managot ang main opposition parties sa mga nasugatang pulis at danyos sa kanilang lugar.
Vandalların saldırılarında yaralanan polislerimizin, camı çerçevesi kırılan esnafımızın, zarar verilen milyarlarca liralık kamu malının tek sorumlusu sokak çağrısı yapan ana muhalefet partisi lideri ve şürekasıdır. Elbette bunların siyasi hesabı mecliste, hukuki hesabı ise yargı önünde sorulacaktır.
Maaalala na noong nakaraang linggo ay ipinakulong ni President Erdogan ang kanyang pinakamahigpit na karibal na nagresulta naman sa pagsiklab ng isa sa pinakamalaking protesta sa Turkiye ng mahigit na isang dekada. Nanindigan naman ang mga taga-suporta ni Mayor İmamoğlu kung saan sinasabi nilang pansariling interes lamang ni Erdogan ang rason sa pagpapakulong sa kanyang kalaban. Sa kabila ng batas na nagbabawal sa pagtitipo ng mga demonstrador sa ilang lungsod sa Turkiye, ay halos 6 na araw ng tuluyang nagpoprotesta ang Republican People's Party ng Turkiye. Umapela naman si Erdogan sa opposing party kung saan sinabi nitong dapat tigilan na nila ang panghihimok sa mga sibilyan na gumalaw laban sa pamahalaan.
Son 5 gündür tanık olduklarımız bize şu gerçeği bir kez daha göstermiştir. Türkiye gibi büyük bir ülkenin basiret, vizyon ve kalite açısından çok küçük, çok iptidai, çok çapsız bir ana muhalefet partisi vardır. Bunları bırakın devleti, bırakın yerel yönetimleri, bir belediye büfesi bile teslim edilmeyeceği tekrar ortaya çıkmıştır. Parti içi iktidar mücadelelerini milletin meselesi haline getirmelerine de aracılık yapmayacağız. Daha önce de birkaç kez çağrıda bulundum. Bugün tekrarlıyorum. Provokasyonlarla vatandaşlarımızın huzurunu bozmaktan artık vazgeçin. Cesaretiniz varsa yolsuzlukların, hırsızlıkların, alınan rüşvetlerin, yapılan usulsüzlüklerin hesabını verin.
Naghanda si Emperor Naruhito ng Japan ng isang military welcome ceremony para kay President Luis Inacio Lula da Silva ng Brazil. Kasama ni Naruhito si Empress Masako na sumalubong kina President Lula at sa asawa nitong si Rosangela sa Imperial Palace. Nasa Japan ang liderato ng Brazil at 100 business delegates nito para sa isang 4-state visit. Target ng Brazil na palawakin at palakasin ang business partnerships at bilateral relationship nito sa Japan dahil sa epekto ng Trump tariffs. Nagtipo ng ilang overseas Filipino workers sa bansang Papua New Guinea upang manawagan napakawala ng International Criminal Court si dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Alamin natin kay NET25 correspondent Eco Hortaleza Quinola kung ano ang mga saloobin ng mga kababayan natin doon.
Maagang nagtungo ang overseas Filipino workers na narito sa Papua New Guinea sa APEC Houseport, Moresby. Dito inorganisa ang isang programang naglalayon iparinig ang tinig ng OFWs na mapalaya ang dating Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte mula sa International Criminal Court o ICC. Layon ng bawat Pilipinong dumalo na mabigyan ng patas at makatarungang pangdinig ang kaso laban kay Duterte. Nagkaisa ang OFWs mula sa mga kasuotan, sabay-sabay na chanting at maging sa mga banners na hawak ng mga ito. Emosyonal na naglabas ng saloobin ang organizer ng programa na si AJ Cabalhin.
Kaya ako minadali ito kasi sabi ko baka kung health condition niya may mangyari, at least may tayo, may naipakita natin na may full support tayo.
Nakapanayam din ng NET25 team ang iba pang Pilipino dito na nagpahayag na para sa kanila ay kabutihan ang mga natatanging nagawa ni Duterte sa bansa.
We believe and also we experience that his leadership is very effective to all the Filipinos actually. There would be mistakes, there would be imperfections, however, the effectiveness actually spread throughout the Philippines.
Itong pagtitipon na ito is to show that we are Filipino and we stand dun sa ating pagiging soberenya bilang isang bansa.
Meron na tayong 2 presidente na try sa Pilipinas, kinulong. Bakit si President Duterte hindi try sa Pilipinas? Diba? Ganun lang naman yun. Kaya ako, full support ako.
Ang laki ng ibinigay niyang tulong sa OFW. Hindi lang tayo basta bayaning nagtatrabaho, suportado siya all the way para sa atin.
Nandito po kami, wala po kaming bayad, wala pong binayad sa amin, at kung tutuusin, kami pa po ang nag-contribute para po kami ay makasama dito sa aming ginagawang event para mapauwi na sa Pilipinas ang ating mahal na Presidente Duterte.
May mga nakalinya pang aktibidad sa darating na Biyernes upang ipagdiwang ang kaarawan ng dating Pangulo. Mula sa Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, Eco Hortaleza Quinola para sa mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Nagmungkahi naman ang Egypt ng bagong kasunduan sa ceasefire sa Gaza kasabay ng pag-atake ng Israel na pumatay sa hindi bababa sa 65 Palestinians sa nakalipas na 24 oras. Mula na ipagpatuloy ng Israel ang pag-atake sa Hamas noong March 18, halos 700 Palestinians ang namatay, kabilang ang 400 na kababaihan at kabataan. 2 lokal na mamamahayag ang kabilang sa mga napatay nitong Lunes na nagdadala sa kabuuang 206 na naiulat na pinatay sa Gaza mula noong October 2023. Kumpirmado rin ng Hamas na ilang matataas na opisyal nila ang napatay. Samantala, napigilan naman ng Israel ang isang missile mula sa Yemen na hinihinalang pinaputok ng Iran-based Houthi forces. Sa ilalim ng panukalang tigil-putukan ng Egypt, kailangang magpalaya ang Hamas na 5 Israeli hostages bawat linggo, habang sisimula naman ng Israel ang ikalawang bahagi ng kasunduan makalipas ang 1 linggo. Sumang-ayon na umano ang Hamas at sa Estados Unidos, ngunit wala pang tugon mula sa Israel. Kinumpirma ng isang opisyal ng Hamas na may patuloy na negosasyon, subalit hindi nito binanggit ang mga detalye ng panukala ng Egypt. Isang US journalist na kinilala bilang si Jeffrey Goldberg ang aksidenteng nai-add sa isang group chat kung saan pinag-usapan ng mga mataas na opisyal ng Estados Unidos, kabilang sina US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth at US Vice President J.D. Vance ang mga naalalapit na airstrikes laban sa mga Houthi rebels sa Yemen. Inamin ng White House ang security breach nitong araw at sinabi nilang aksidenteng naidagdag ang isang numero sa isang chat. Maaalala ang mga airstrikes na inanunsyo ni US President Donald Trump noong March 15 ay pinangungunahan ng mga detalye na ibinabahagi sa chat, kabilang ang impormasyon tungkol sa mga target at oras ng pag-atake na hindi ipinahayag ni Goldberg. Sa kabila ng pagkakaroon ng leak, tinawag ni Trump ang airstrike bilang very effective.
Mr. President, your reaction to the story in The Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of the Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis? Right. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
Ayon kasi sa kumalat na leak ng Estados Unidos, nagpadala umano si US Defense Secretary Hegseth ng detalyadong impormasyon tungkol sa strike, pati na ang oras ng pagsabog nito sa bahaging parte ng Yemen kung saan nakabase ang Houthi rebels.
Your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in the Atlantic, and were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is a guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign because of the skill and courage of our troops. I've monitored it very closely from the beginning. And you see, we've been managing 4 years of deferred maintenance under the Trump administration. Our troops, our sailors were getting shot at as targets. Our ships couldn't sail through. And when they did shoot back, it was purely defensively or at shacks in Yemen. President Trump said, no more. We will reestablish deterrence. We will open freedom of navigation, and we will ultimately decimate the Houthis, which is exactly what we're doing as we speak from the beginning, overwhelmingly.
Nagdulot naman ito ng matinding galit sa mga Democrats kung saan sinabi ni US Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer na ito raw ang paglabag sa military intelligence at nagdemand ng agarang investigasyon. Habang pinuna rin ni US Senator Jack Reed ang kumalat na leak at sinabing ang kawalan ng pag-iingat ng mga gabinete ni Trump ay maituturing na mapanganib.
Sa isang buwan naman po, 28 ng Abril, magsasagawa ng snap election sa Canada. Para sa mga taga-Toronto, pangunahing mga issue para sa kanila ang labanan ang taripa at relasyon sa pagitan ng Canada at ng Estados Unidos. Cherry Recolizado para sa balitang yan.
Noong linggo, nanawagan para sa isang snap election ang kapapanumpang Prime Minister ng Canada na si Mark Carney. Ayon sa Prime Minister, kailangan nito ang matinding mandato upang tugunan ang bantang dala ni US President Donald Trump na anyay nais pagwatak-watakin ang Canada upang maari ito. Ayon kay Toronto resident Jameson McFine, nais niyang manindigan ang sinumang Prime Minister para sa kapakanan ng Canada.
I would expect that whoever the Prime Minister is, whoever the leader is, that they stay true to like Canadian roots, they hold their ground, and we don't give in to any of the tariffs or any of the nonsense about becoming a 51st state.
Kawangis na sentimiento ang mayroon si Jose Cardona ng Toronto rin.
No, I just want to see a leader that's firm, a leader that definitely puts Canada first, and a leader that I guess will do their best to get our Canada-US relations back on track as much as they can be. You know, it's definitely not his fault if he has to deal with Donald Trump's whims here and there, but yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Ramdam sa mga komento ang umiinit na relasyon ngayon ng US at Canada na dati-rati magkaalyado at magkapartner sa kalakalan. Dahil nitong mga nakaraang buwan, mula nang maupo si Trump bilang Pangulo, tila rumupok ang relasyon ng dalawang bansa matapos magpatupad ng taripa ang US at magbantang gagawing 51st state nito ang Canada. Cherry Recolizado para sa mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Matapos masawi ang 5 staff members ng United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees o UNRWA, nagpasya ang ahensya na babawasan nito ang bakas sa Gaza. Alamin natin ang mga detalye mula kay Ashley Sakmar.
Ayon kay UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric, babawasan ng UN ang footprint o bakas nito sa Gaza matapos mapatay ang 5 empleyado ng UNRWA dahil sa labanang Hamas at Israel.
As you know, in the past week, Israel carried out devastating strikes on Gaza, claiming the lives of hundreds of civilians, including United Nations personnel, with no humanitarian aid being allowed to enter the Gaza Strip since early March. As a result, the Secretary General has taken the difficult decision to reduce the United Nations footprint in Gaza, even as humanitarian needs soar and our concern over the protection of civilians intensifies.
Ayon sa pahayag, hindi ibig sabihin ay iiwanan ng UN ang Gaza. Nananatilian niyang nakatuon ang ahensya sa pagbibigay ng tulong sa mga sibilyan sa teritoryo.
We are not leaving Gaza. I repeat, the United Nations is not leaving Gaza. We remain committed to continuing to provide aid that civilians depend on for their survival and for their protection.
Sa patuloy na pag-atake ng Israel sa Gaza, sinabi ng UN na tila walang planong tigilan ng Israel ang operasyon militar nito laban sa Gaza. Binigyang diin nito na lahat ng partido ay kailangang kumilala sa gampanin ng UN at dapat itong bigyan ng proteksyon.
The strikes claimed the life of a UN colleague from Bulgaria and left 6 others from France, Moldova, North Macedonia, Palestine, and the United Kingdom with severe injuries, some of them life-altering. The location of this UN compound was well known to all the parties in the conflict, and I reiterate that all parties to the conflict are bound by international law to protect the inviolability of United Nations premises. Without this, our colleagues face intolerable risks as they work to save the lives of civilians.
Nananawagan anya si Secretary General Antonio Guterres na ibalik na ang tigil putukan upang wakasan na ang pagdurusa ng mga naiipit sa labanan. Ashley Sakmar para sa mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Susunod, rider ng motorsiklo patay sa South Korea nang mahulog sa sinkhole.
Turista sa India, hinabol ng rhino.
At magkasintahan sa China na ospital ng gayahi ng isang viral trend. Mga detalye po ng mga balitang yan at iba pang mga balita sa pagbabalik ng Mata ng Agila International.
Matatapang na mga komentaryo.
Tingin ng masa dito, this is just actually a ploy to weed out a person who potentially can actually win in 2028.
Mga balita at impormasyong hihimayin. Kasama ang mga batikang komentarista. Sina Ali Soto.
Hindi pa ako nakakapag-umpisa kong. Dahil aminado naman kayo, kalabisan din yung ginagawa ng ibang kasama nyo dyan.
At Pat P. Daza.
Desperado na siya. There's no way na makakapasok yung kanyang slate unless patayin itong 15.
Sa ASPN. Ano sa palagay nyo? Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 8 hanggang alas 10 ng umaga, dito sa NET25.
Together sa NET25.
Papremyo at kasiyahan. Yan ang hatid namin for everyone. Magkita-kita tayo, mga taga-barangay Poblasyon 1, Marilao, Bulacan. Salubungin natin ang umaga sa Barangay BF International Village CAA, Las Piñas City. Sa Miyerkules, mag-good morning tayo sa Barangay South Signal, Taguig City. Sa Huwebes, see you sa Barangay 190 Zone 20, Pasay City. At sa Biyernes, nandyan kami sa Barangay San Rafael, Muntal Alban Rizal. Sabay-sabay nating ngitian ang umaga kasama kaming kabarangay nyo, LTE, Love, Tony Beth, and Evra Fang.
Let's net together sa NET25.
Nagbabalik ang mata ng Agila International. At sa pagpapatuloy po ng ating mga balita ngayong gabi. Patuloy ang pagkalat ng wildfire sa kagubatan ng 2 prefectures sa kanlurang rehiyon ng Japan. Ayon sa lokal na ulat, apektado ng wildfires ang Ehime Prefecture at Okayama Prefecture. Sa Ehime Prefecture, higit sa 1,000 katao mula sa 553 tirahan ang inilikas dahil sa sunog. Samantala, sa Okayama Prefecture, nasa 300 hectares na land forest ang tinupok ng apoy. Napinsala naman ang 6 na gusali sa Tamano City habang 2 bombero ang nasaktan sa pag-apula sa wildfires. Hindi pa po tukoy ng mga otoridad ang sanhi ng wildfires sa 2 prefectures.
Natagpo ang patay ng mga rescuers ang rider ng motorsiklong nahulog sa bumukang sinkhole sa isang intersection sa Myeonggil-dong neighborhood sa South Korea. Ayon sa lokal na ulat, hapon nang magmaneho o nagmamaneho ang biktima sa kalsada ng nilamon siya ng sinkhole. May lapad at lalim na 20 meters ang bumukang sinkhole sa daan. Sa salaysay ni Emergency Officer Kim Chang-siob, ang rider ay isang 30 anyos na lalaki. Inaalam naman ng Seoul authorities ang dahilan ng paglitaw ng sinkhole.
Nagsigawan po ang isang grupo ng mga turista sa India dahil sa takot na sila ay maabutan ng isang galit na rhinoceros. Mula sa nakalat na video, kita ang aktual na chase scene sa pagitan ng hayop at ng mga turista. 2 jeep ang pilit na tinatakasan ng malaking hayop. Sinusubukan kasi ng rhino na suwagin ang isa sa mga jeep para ito tumagilid. Ay buti na lamang po ay mabilis ang pagpapatakbo ng driver kaya hindi nagtagumpay ang hayop sa kanyang pag-atake. Nangyari ang insidente sa Manas National Park. Sinabi naman ng tagapagsalita ng parke na kanilang iniimbestigahan na ang pangyayari at kanilang inaalam ang ugat ng agresibong pagkilos ng rhino sa mga turista. Inabisuhan na rin nila ang mga turista na sundin ang kanilang inilatag na park regulations at panatilihin ang sapat na distansya mula sa mga hayop para na rin sa kanilang kaligtasan.
Dinala ang magkasintahan sa China sa paggamutan matapos gayahin nila ang isang viral trend na kumakalat ngayon sa social media. Nangyari ang lahat matapos kainin ng lalaki ang buong kamao ng kanyang kasintahan. Pero sa hindi inaasahan ay hindi na mahugot ang kamay ng babae sa bibig ng lalaki. Dito na sila dumiretso sa paggamutan para matignan ng mga espesyalista ang kanilang kalagayan. At matapos ang 20 minutos ay natanggal din ang kamao ng babae sa bibig ng lalaki. Pinayuhan naman ng mga otoridad ang publiko na huwag gayahin ang mga delikatong trends online dahil maaaring isa peligro nito ang buhay ng mga individual.
Nakararanas po ang bansang Japan ng economic slowdown dahil sa pagbaba ng factory services nito. Ang Purchasing Managers Index mula sa bagong datos ng OG Boon Bank ay bumaba ng 48.3 mula sa dating 49 points. Nagkaroon nila ng pagbaba sa produksyon at sa mga bagong placement order. Ito ay mas mababa sa 50-point mark na isang indikasyon ng pagtaas ng factory services sa buong Japan. Ilan sa mga tinuturong dahilan ng mga kumpanya ay ang pagtaas ng gastos, kakulangan sa trabaho at kawalan ng katiyakan. Bunsod ng pagtaas ng pandaigdigang tensyon sa kalakalan. Dahil dito ay asahan na mananatiling mataas ang inflation na siyang magiging dahilan ng pagtaas ng rate hikes ng Bank of Japan sa mga susunod na buwan.
Kinumpirma ng Samsung Electronics na namayapa na si Han Jong-hee, ang co-chief executive ng kumpanya. Ayon sa tech giant, inatake sa puso ang 63 taong gulang na si Han. Sinabi ng isang analyst na malaki ang naiambag ng naturang Samsung boss sa pagiging global player ng kumpanya sa larangan ng paggawa ng telebisyon. Papalit sa kanyang pwesto si Jun Yong-hyun.
possibly to US tariffs.
Sinimula na ang trials para sa River Robotics, isang Swiss company. Ang robot dog ay kilala sa tawag na Milo na kayang magdala ng mga packages galing sa isang delivery truck. Ayon sa River, layo ng kanilang product na mabawasan ang pasanin ng mga delivery drivers. Dinisenyo ang robot na may crane-like arm para magsilbing tagahawak ng mga parcel ng mga customer. Higit pa rito, pinaandar din ito ng artificial intelligence o AI technology para sa navigation ng kanilang dinadaanan.
Pasok na ang Japan sa 2026 Men's World Cup matapos nilang talunin ang Bahrain 2-0. Sila po ang unang bansang nag-qualify sa nasabing World Cup na ang magiging host ay ang US, Canada at Mexico. Naging susi sa panalo ng Samurai Blue Soccer Team sila Daichi Kamada at Takefusa Kubo. Ang Japan rin ang naging non-host nation na mag-qualify sa 2026 Men's World Cup dahil ang tatlong host countries po ay tiyak na ang pagpasok sa 48-team tournament. Bilang nanguna sa Group C ay ito na ang pangwalong sunod na pagpasok ng Japan sa World Cup.
Ikinalungkot ng marami ang pagpanaw ng boxing legend na si George Edward Foreman Sr. Nabatid na kapiling niya ang kanyang mga mahal sa buhay nang siya ay bawian ng buhay sa edad na 76. Si George Foreman ay hindi lamang isang tanyag na personalidad sa larangan ng boxing bilang 2 beses na heavyweight champion ng mundo, kundi isa ring huwaran bilang pilantropo. Ang kanyang pagiging Olympian ay simbolo ng kanyang tapang at dedikasyon, samantala ang kanyang pagiging isang pastor ay sumasalamin naman sa kanyang pananampalataya. Sa pagpanaw ni George Foreman, hindi lamang isang alamat sa sports ang nawala, kundi isang taong may malasakit at disiplina. Ang legendary boxer ay minsan ding pinuri ang galing ni Pinoy ring icon Manny Pacquiao, lalo na ang pagiging underdog nito sa mga laban, ngunit madalas na nagwawagi.
Samantala, tiyak na po ang pagsabak ng Pinay tennis sensation na si Alex Agila sa quarterfinals ng Miami Open. Bunso dito ng pag-atras ni Paula Badosa ng Spain mula sa tournament. Sinasabing dahil sa inindang injury, hindi nakakayanin ni Badosa na muli pang sumalang sa match. Dahil sa mga adjustments, kaagad na nakapasok si Agila sa quarterfinals ng prestihiyosong torneo. Ang 19-year-old na Filipina ay patuloy na gumagawa ng kasaysayan sa larangan ng tennis, lalo na at ito ang kanyang unang pagkakataong makarating sa ganitong antas sa isang WTA 1000 na torneo. Ang tagumpay na ito ay isang malaking hakbang para sa Philippine tennis at tiyak na magbibigay inspirasyon sa mga kabataang atleta ng bansa. Ngayon po, haharapin naman ni Agila ang former world #1 player na si Iga Swiatek sa susunod na round.
Matapos ang unang round para sa Oriental and Pacific Boxing Federation Bantamweight title match, ay matagumpay na nasungkit ni Filipino boxing fighter Kenneth Llover ang inaasam na titulo sa Korakuen Hall sa Tokyo, Japan. Halos 2 minuto pa lang ng unang round ay agad nagpakawala ng sunod-sunod na signature straight jab si Llover gamit ang kanyang kaliwang kamao para pabagsakin ang kanyang kalaban na si Keita Kurihara. Nang tumama ang isang kaliwa ay bumagsak si Kurihara sa loob ng boxing ring. Kinaya pa ni Kurihara na tumayo matapos magsimulang mag-countdown ang referee. Pero tinamaan naman ang malakas na left overhand si Kurihara na ikinatumba muli nito. Nakatayo pa ang Japanese boxer sa ikalawang pagkakataon pero tinapos na ni Llover ang laban sa isang left hand. Ang pagkapanalo ni Llover ay nagbunga ng isa na namang perfect record na 14 wins and 0 loss at 9 knockouts.
Inanunsyo po ng K-pop group na NJZ, formerly known as New Jeans, ang pansamantalang paghinto sa kanilang aktibidad sa kanilang pagtatanghal sa Complex Con, Hong Kong nitong nakaraang linggo. Mariel Abalia para sa Scoop.
Right now, our hearts are a little bit worn out and it feels a bit too hard to just keep going at this pace, but that doesn't mean we're going to give up, and we're going to keep going. And with this decision we've made, we're respecting the court's decision, and for now it's just us taking a step back to pause, take a breath and gather our hearts and ourselves before moving forward again.
Sinabi ito ng New Jeans matapos matalo sa kaso laban sa kanilang record label na Adore. Ayon sa desisyon ng Korte sa Seoul, hindi sila maaaring magdaos ng sariling pagtatanghal, gumawa ng bagong musika o pumirma ng kontrata sa labas ng kanilang kasunduan sa Adore. Nagsimula ang sigalot noong August 2024 nang tanggalin ng HYBE ang parent company ng Adore at ang mentor ng grupo na si Min Hee-jin. Hiningi ng New Jeans ang kanyang pagbabalik at kalaunan ay inakusahan ang label ng pagmamaltrato at pagsabotahe sa kanilang karera. Sinabi rin ng miyembrong si Honey na nakaranas siya ng harassment sa trabaho. Sa kabila ng pag-anunsyo ng kanilang pag-alis sa Adore noong November, ipinasya ng korte na hindi sapat ang ebidensyang lumabag ang label sa kanilang kontrata. Dahil dito, hindi maaaring gumamit ang grupo ng bagong pangalan nilang NJZ nang hindi humaharap sa financial penalties sa breach of contract. Sa kanilang mensahe sa fans, sinabi nila na ito marahil ang aming huling pagtatanghal sa ngayon at nagpasya silang huminto pansamantala upang protektahan ang kanilang sarili at makabalik ng mas matatag. Ginamit ng grupo ang pangalang NJZ at inilunsad ang bagong kantang Pit Stop. Binatikos ng Adore ang paggamit ng pangalang NJZ at ang desisyon ng grupo na itigil ang kanilang mga aktibidad ng walang pahintulot. Gayunpaman, sinabi nilang bukas pa rin sila sa pakikipag-usap upang pag-usapan ang susunod na hakbang. Ang New Jeans ang isa sa brightest new bands sa K-pop noong 2023 at 8th biggest selling act in the world. Mariel Abalia para sa mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Ang blobfish na minsan kinilala bilang pinakapangit na hayop, grabe naman yung pinakapangit sa mundo, ay itinanghal ng isang organisasyon sa New Zealand bilang Fish of the Year. Ayon sa National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, ang blobfish ay may malambot na mala-gelatin na katawan, malaking ilong at maliliit na mga mata. Karaniwang matatagpuan ang blobfish sa deep sea malapit sa Australia at Tasmania sa lalim na 2,000 hanggang 4,000 feet. Mula sa event na pinangasiwaan ng Mountains to Sea Conservation Trust, nakakuha ng kabuuang 5,583 votes ang blobfish, kung saan tinalo nito ang orange referee ng halos 300 votes. Layo ng event na ito na itampok ang biodiversity at conservation sa karagatan. Gayon din ang palawaki ng kaalaman tungkol sa mga endangered fish dahil sa climate change at pagkasira ng kanilang mga tahanan.
Grabe, cute naman yung blobfish, Nina, di ba? Tsaka don't judge a book by its cover. Anyway, sinusubaybayan po ng milyong viewers ang sa livestream website upang matulungan ang mga migrating fish sa the Netherlands. Ang website na Fish Doorbell ay ideya ni ecologist Mark van Huklum matapos makita naiipon sa isang river lock ang mga isdang nais mag-migrate sa panahon ng kanilang mating season. Ang website ay ginawa upang maalerto ng mga manonood ang mga otoridad na buksan ang river lock upang makaraan ang mga naipong isda. 5 taong inaabangan ang live stream ng mga netizens na nais tulungan ang mga dumaraang isda. Noong nakaraang taon lamang ay umabot sa 9.3 million viewers ang Fish Doorbell. Ang Fish Doorbell po ay online tuwing Marso hanggang Mayo bawat taon na panahon din ng fish mating season. At narito po kami para maghatid ng balita saan mang dako ng mundo. Magandang gabi po. Ako po muli si Ricky Matay.
Ako si Nina Richie Alago Flores, ito ang Mata ng Agila International. Para naman sa iba pang mga balita na nangyari rin sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo, punta tayo kay Alma Angeles para sa Mata ng Agila World News. Take it away, Alma.
Thank you, Nina and Ricky. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines, Malacanang has assured that it will not freeze the assets of former President Rodrigo Duterte, even if the International Criminal Court issues such an order.
There is no commitment on our part, on the part of the administration, if we will comply with any order issued by the ICC, considering that the ICC, as of the moment, has no jurisdiction over the Philippines.
A shocking breach of national security. Senior Trump officials, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, discussed classified war plans for strikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels in a Signal group chat that accidentally included the Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg. A 6.7 magnitude earthquake struck off New Zealand's South Island today, prompting coastal warnings and assessments for tsunami risks. And the news starts now. Malacanang has assured that it will not freeze the assets of former President Rodrigo Duterte, even if the International Criminal Court issues such an order. The palace emphasized that the ICC has no jurisdiction over the Philippines. Take a look.
There is no commitment on our part, on the part of the administration, if we will comply with any order issued by the ICC, considering that the ICC, as of the moment, has no jurisdiction over the Philippines.
However, Castro previously mentioned that any ICC request to freeze Duterte's assets would be referred to the Anti-Money Laundering Council, or AMLC, in light of former President Duterte's upcoming birthday on March 28. Undersecretary Castro extended her greetings, wishing him a happy celebration.
Kantahan natin ang happy birthday. Yun lang po. Siyempre birthday po yun. Kailangan po maging maligaya ang taong nag-birthday at wini-wish po natin siya ng happy birthday. Ipapaalala ko po sa kanya na birthday po ni dating Pangulong Duterte sa March 28. Baka po hindi niya po natatandaan.
Senate President Francis Cheese Escudero revealed today that Malacanang warned lawmakers that cabinet members could invoke executive privilege during the probe into former President Rodrigo Duterte's arrest. Here's more. The letter arrived on March 20, the same day Senator Amy Marcos chaired the Senate hearing.
Sumulat sa akin, sumulat din kay chairperson ng komite, Senator Amy Marcos, na ipinukol ni Senator Marcos. Kung maalala nyo, ito ay bugso na naging desisyon ng Korte Suprema noong mga nagdaang panahon kaugnay sa EO 464 na pinasa ni dating Pangulong Arroyo. Tutol ako na iakyat sa Korte Suprema yan dahil ayoko mabigyan sana ng pagkakataon ng Korte Suprema na magbaba ng masamang desisyon. Pero pinagpilit yan ng mga kasamahan ko noon. At ang resulta nga, kinatigan ng Korte Suprema at naging parte ng batas natin na legal ang executive privilege kaugnay sa anumang pagdinig ng Senado man o ng Kamara.
At the hearing, Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla and Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla stayed silent when asked about a pre-arrest cabinet meeting with President Marcos. They cited executive privilege.
They simply cited the Supreme Court decision that held executive privilege to be validly invoked by the executive branch. But again, the position I took was not as a reason for them not to attend, and they all attended, and I thank them for attending, but to be invoked whenever a question is asked that would tend to divulge any conversations with the President himself. And that was exactly what happened in the hearing.
Meanwhile, Senator Bongo is calling for peace and unity in the country as former President Rodrigo Duterte celebrates his 80th birthday this Friday, March 28. According to the senator, this will be the first time the former president will celebrate his birthday away from his family.
Alam niyo, ang hirap pong mag-isa doon, ang kanyang kaligtasan at ang kanyang kalayaan po. Ulitin ko, I'm praying po sa kanyang kalusugan, kaligtasan at kalayaan. At nananawagan po ako na huwag tayong tumigil, manalangin at huwag tayong tumigil na manawagan po sa ating mga kababayan na sana po'y makabalik na siya.
A 6.7 magnitude earthquake struck off New Zealand's South Island today, prompting coastal warnings and assessments for tsunami risks. The tremor, initially reported as a 7.0, occurred at a depth of 10 kilometers off the southwest tip, according to the USGS. Authorities urge residents in Southland and Fiordland to avoid beaches and marine areas due to strong, unpredictable currents. Do not return to boats unless directed, according to the agency's warning. Over 4,700 people felt the quake, with reports of items falling from shelves and buildings swaying. A Facebook user shared, "We had things fall off the shelf. The outdoor wooden table was shaking." The epicenter was 160 kilometers northwest of the Snares Island, part of New Zealand's sub-Antarctic chain. Australia confirmed no tsunami threat to its mainland or territories. New Zealand sits on the Ring of Fire, a volatile zone of volcanoes and trenches. While today's quake caused no major damage, it echoes the 2011 Christchurch disaster, which killed 185 people. Over 1,000 residents were told to evacuate their homes in southwestern Japan as the wildfire continued to rage, while firefighters battled to tame the blaze, according to local media.
もう山際ですから家がね、家でも燃えたらもうどうしようかな思うぐらいです。
命が大事だから避難しなさい言って言われてから。
The fire, which started on Sunday in the city of Imabari in Ehime Prefecture, is estimated to have destroyed at least 214 hectares of land. Dry weather was expected to continue in the city of Imabari. A separate wildfire that also started on Sunday in Okayama Prefecture in southwestern Japan destroyed 250 hectares of land and damaged 6 buildings, but stopped spreading that following morning, according to NHK. Firefighters and Japan's Self-Defense Force helicopters were working to extinguish the fire in Okayama on Tuesday. Wildfires are spreading in South Korea, threatening the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Haho Village. Thousands are evacuating as the blaze nears the city of Andong. Officials say the fire is now just 10 kilometers from the historic village. The fires, fueled by strong winds and dry conditions, have already claimed 4 lives and destroyed ancient temples. A grueling 18-hour rescue operation in Seoul ended in tragedy today. A motorcyclist who fell into a 20-meter deep sinkhole was found dead in a subway tunnel under construction. Rescuers battled through water, dirt, and debris to locate the victim. Dashboard camera footage captured the horrifying moment of the collapse. A shocking breach of national security. Senior Trump officials, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, discussed classified war plans for strikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels in a Signal group chat that accidentally included the Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg. A jaw-dropping story tonight about a national security breach that's sending shockwaves through Washington. Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, was accidentally added to a highly sensitive Signal group about U.S. military operations. In his own words, he initially thought I assumed I thought I was being spoofed or hoaxed or being included in some kind of disinformation campaign because it was simply too improbable to me. Goldberg revealed in his article that he knew about the attack 2 hours before the first bombs exploded, adding, "The reason I knew this is that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, had texted me the war plan at 11:44 a.m. The plan included precise information about weapons packages, targets, and timing."
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used? And
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
The political reaction has been swift. Democrats are outraged. As reported, Senator Chuck Schumer called it one of the most stunning breaches of military intelligence.
Earlier today, The Atlantic magazine released a stunning and alarming report about the accidental leaking of the Trump administration's coordination on classified military operations targeting the Houthis in Yemen. According to the report, a member of the press was somehow added to an unsecured text chain with the Vice President, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, the CIA Director, and other national security officials. The text chain was not a secure conversation. The app used is not approved for discussing classified military operations. Nevertheless, on this text chain, conversations went at length about imminent military operations, including specific targets, weapons, and attack plans. These text messages very likely included classified U.S. intelligence. Mr. President, this is one of the most stunning breaches of military intelligence I have read about in a very, very long time. If these detailed exchanges about coordinating military operations fell into the hands of America's enemies, it could get people killed. Now we must have accountability, and both parties in the Senate should investigate how this blunder was even possible.
When asked about the attack, President Trump's response was characteristically dismissive.
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis? Right. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
The national security has acknowledged the authenticity of the chat, stating they're reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain and there were no threats to our service members or national security. A fascinating twist, Goldberg was discretionary. As the report noted, the administration is lucky the person they added to the chat was a serious journalist because Jeff Goldberg did not report the name of a covert CIA official and left the chat when they started talking about sensitive bomb assessments. Just another day in the high-stakes world of national security. The United States and Russia have recently engaged in diplomatic talks aimed at addressing the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. These discussions held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, have focused on critical issues such as a potential ceasefire in the Black Sea, the protection of energy and civilian infrastructure, and broader efforts to pave the way for peace. Take a look.
The talks took place in this hotel in Riyadh and focused, among other issues, on trying to reach a Black Sea maritime ceasefire deal. They're being portrayed by Washington as a step in President Donald Trump's efforts to end the 3-year-old war. A White House source says progress is being made, adding that a positive announcement is expected in the near future. Russian media described the mood of the Russian delegation at the end of the talks as good. A draft joint statement is being reviewed by Moscow and Washington for approval and is expected to be released today. Earlier on Monday, Trump said the rare earths deal with Ukraine is nearly complete and will be signed very soon. The president says a number of other issues are on the table.
We're talking about territory right now. We're talking about lines of demarcation. We're talking about power plant ownership. Some people are saying the United States should own the power plant and then work it that way because we have the expertise to fix it up, et cetera, et cetera. It's okay. That would something like that would be fine with me. But they are talking about ownership of the big nuclear power plant in particular. But all of these things will come up, and they have come up, and that has been discussed.
A Ukrainian delegation is in Saudi Arabia. It remained on the sidelines while Russia and the U.S. met. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he wants to see progress in the talks.
Сьогодні представники Сполучених Штатів Америки.
Today, U.S. representatives spoke with the war team, with the representatives of Russia, and afterwards, again a meeting of the Ukrainian and American teams. I am expecting a new report. We need a movement towards real peace, towards guaranteed security. This is necessary for everyone, in Ukraine, in Europe, in America, and for all those in the world who seek stability in international relations.
And while the talks go on, there seems to be no let-up in the fighting. On Monday, Russian missiles struck the city of Sumy in northeastern Ukraine. Several high-rise residential blocks sustained damage, along with a school and a hospital. The region's governor says school children had been in a shelter at the time, averting even worse casualties. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha says instead of making hollow statements about peace, Russia must stop the bombing and end its war on civilians. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
Staying in Washington, President Donald Trump asserts that he alone possesses the capability to end the ongoing war in Ukraine. In a recent interview, President Trump stated, "There's nobody who can stop Russian President Vladimir Putin except me." He also emphasized having engaged in rational discussions with Putin aimed at halting the bloodshed. Take a look. These remarks come shortly after his envoy, Steve Witkoff, described Putin as a great leader and not a bad guy.
I simply have said that I just don't see that he wants to take all of Europe. This is a much different situation than it was in World War II. In World War II, there was no NATO. So you have countries that are armed there. To me, it just does, I take him at his word in this sense. So, and I think the Europeans are beginning. I feel that he wants peace. The president had two very productive calls this week, or last week, I should say, one with President Zelensky, one with President Putin. I sat and listened to both of them. In both conversations, it was all about a lasting peace. So there are grievances on both sides, but our job, and at the direction, again, I stress, of the president, our job is to narrow the issues, bring the parties together, and stop the killing. That's the game plan.
We now turn to President Donald Trump's renewed interest in Greenland. The icy resource-rich island is once again at the center of geopolitical tensions as a high-profile U.S. delegation led by Second Lady Usha Vance, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and Energy Secretary Chris Wright arrives there this week. According to the White House, the trip aims to celebrate Greenlandic culture with visits to historical sites. However, many, including Greenland's leaders, perceive it as a more assertive move. Outgoing Prime Minister Mute Egere has labeled the visit a provocation, stating that it demonstrates aggressive American pressure. He also expressed concerns that the delegation's presence would intensify President Trump's ambitions to assert control over Greenland. Greenland, a semi-autonomous Danish territory, has long been of strategic interest to the U.S. Situated along the shortest route between Europe and North America, the island hosts a crucial U.S. military base and possesses vast reserves of rare earth minerals vital for modern technology and defense. With Russia and China also eyeing the Arctic, the U.S. appears to be increasing its presence in the region.
A cutter that we have sped up the process, surf, the icebreaker, that'll be hitting the waters here this summer, and we've got 2 more that will be coming. But Russia is using their cutters and icebreakers up in the Arctic to do surveillance on us, and we're going to reposition our fleet to continue to partner. I want to thank the Secretary of Defense and the Navy for all of their help and partnership too. We do operations together because their obvious Navy warships are in certain regions, but our cutters are faster and can work together in a partnership that's securing America.
President Trump has emphasized Greenland's importance to U.S. national security.
Yeah, well, not provocation. This is friendliness, not provocation. We're dealing with a lot of people from Greenland that would like to see something happen with respect to their being properly protected and properly taken care of. They're calling us, we're not calling them. And we were invited over there, and I thought it would be I have great respect for the wife of our of our great vice president. I think she's a brilliant woman. She's a very nice woman, and she loves the concept of Greenland. And so she's going there, and I think Marco's going there, and some others are going there. But we've been invited, and they really like the idea because they have been somewhat abandoned, as you know. They haven't been taken good care of. And I think Greenland's going to be something that maybe is in our future. I think it's important. It's important from the standpoint of international security. And if you look at the ships outside of Greenland, you have Russia, you have China, you have lots of different people and lots of different places, and it cannot go on the way it is. It's not going to go on the way it is. I'll make a statement. It's not going to happen. So they're going there, and that's purely friendship.
Who's doing the inviting?
A lot of people, yeah. People from Greenland are asking us to go there. We have many, many requests from many, many people, some officials too.
The visit by Second Lady Usha Vance and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz comes at a particularly sensitive time. Greenland is currently in a caretaker period following recent elections, with the left-wing party defeated and Jens Frederik Nielsen likely to become the next leader.
I understand that people are worried because we have recently experienced something we have never experienced before, where we have been treated unacceptably, which is not worthy among close friends and allies. The upcoming private visit of the wife of the U.S. Vice President and the U.S. President's top security advisor cannot be seen as just a private visit. We can already see how much of a stir it has created. From what we know, the guests will visit Patuxent, Sisimiut, where they will watch dog sled races and pass by Nuuk, where several police and security personnel have arrived today as an advance guard. There will be no meetings between the guests and the incumbent government. The Americans have also been clearly informed that meetings can only take place when a new government has taken office. Furthermore, it must be highlighted that our integrity and democracy must be respected, without any disturbances from the outside.
Meanwhile, many locals remain deeply skeptical. A recent poll found that 85% of Greenlanders oppose becoming part of the U.S., with nearly half viewing President Trump's ambitions as a direct threat. Despite this, the Trump administration is proceeding with the delegation's visit. As they touch down this week, all eyes are on how far the pressure will go. Will Greenland hold its ground, or will President Trump's persistence pay off? And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said China firmly opposes the move by the United States to penalize countries that buy oil and gas from Venezuela with tariffs on trades with the U.S.
The United States has long abused illegal unilateral sanctions and so-called long-arm jurisdiction, blatantly interfering in the internal affairs of other countries. China firmly opposes this and urges the U.S. to stop interfering in Venezuela's internal affairs, lift its illegal unilateral sanctions on Venezuela, and take more actions that contribute to the peaceful and stable development of Venezuela and other nations. There are no winners in trade wars or tariff wars. Raising tariffs will only impose greater losses on American businesses and consumers.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday issued an executive order declaring that any country buying oil or gas from Venezuela will pay a 25% tariff on trades with the U.S., while his administration extended a deadline for U.S. producer Chevron to wind down operations in the South American country.
El gobierno de Estados Unidos sancionó a una empresa estadounidense tratando de hacerle un...
The U.S. government sanctioned an American company trying to harm the Venezuelan economy. They are hurting themselves because we will continue to produce, recover, and grow, and nothing and no one will stop us. That's why I activated the Absolute Productive Independence Plan, because nothing and no one will stop us.
Absoluta, porque nada ni nadie nos va a detener.
Trump's new policy relieves some pressure on Chevron to quickly exit Venezuela after the U.S. Treasury Department on March 4 gave it 30 days to wind down operations. Trump had issued the initial wind down after he accused President Maduro of not making progress on electoral reforms and migrant returns. Samsung Electronics announced the death of co-CEO Han Jong-hee from a heart attack, leaving Jun Yang-yoon to lead the company as it confronts difficulties in its chip business and navigates a complex global trade environment.
Samsung Electronics said Tuesday that co-chief executive Han Jong-hee has died of a heart attack at the age of 63. He joined the South Korean giant nearly 40 years ago and built his career in the firm's television unit. One analyst said he was a key figure in making the firm a global player in TVs. Now his passing leaves newly appointed co-CEO Jun Young-hyun in charge. He was only appointed to the role last week at Samsung's annual shareholder meeting. In a stock market filing, the firm said Jun would be the sole chief for now. But the company has traditionally had co-CEOs, dividing oversight of its consumer products and chips divisions. Now Han's death comes at an awkward moment, with Samsung trying to navigate global trade tensions sparked by US tariffs. At last week's shareholder meeting, he told investors that 2025 would be a difficult year. Han said Samsung would respond flexibly to US tariffs using its sprawling global supply chain and manufacturing operations. Investors grilled him on the firm's failure to make the most of the AI boom, where it has lagged local rival SK Hynix in supplying high-end chips. Samsung shares fell around 1% in Tuesday trade following the news of Han's death.
Self-driving cars are hitting Britain's challenging country roads, testing their capabilities on narrow lanes that often lack markings and maintain high speed limits. The Volvad project aims to accelerate the UK's autonomous vehicle rollout by proving their reliability in these complex environments. Take a look.
This driverless car is testing its systems on Britain's narrow country lanes. The vehicle is part of Evolve AD, an autonomous driving project aimed at turbocharging the UK's rollout of self-driving cars.
We started off being able to drive on motorways and then dual carriageways in cities. But the latest part is how do we get it to drive in country roads or, complex urban streets where you've got two-way traffic?
That's David Moss, head of research and development at Nissan UK. The demonstration car, a Nissan Leaf, is packed with sensors and electronics, from LiDAR to facial recognition. And with access to CCTV cameras, it can even see around corners.
So what the team have spent a lot of time is looking, using the sensors to understand what is around the vehicle, where's it going, and then to keep up with the traffic flow.
The autonomous Nissan drove a route several miles long on non-major roads, often at the speed limit, passing vehicles along the way. Inside are 2 Nissan engineers, Brendan Thomas Nugan O'Hare in the back, monitoring progress, and Tom Watts up front, ready to take over should he need to.
There's 15 cameras on the car, there's 4 long-range LiDARs and 2 wide-angle LiDARs on the side of the car. They are all fused together in a data system to basically give the car a 360 view of everything in its surrounding, better than most humans would ever be able to achieve.
And we also use 2 production sensors as well. We use the vehicle radar and we use the camera up by the wind sensor mirror as well.
LiDAR uses lasers to produce 3-dimensional images of a vehicle's surroundings to help navigate around obstacles. But the Nissan car's cameras are watching more than just the road and other vehicles. They can now use facial recognition to assess whether a pedestrian is about to become a hazard even before they do. David Moss explains.
When you see pedestrians on the side of the road, part of the technology was actually trying to understand from people's facial recognition is what is their intention? Are they going to step out in front of the vehicle or not?
Another development allows the car to access CCTV cameras along its route, which Moss says helps it keep up with traffic.
We can take information from the city infrastructure, so cameras, so we can actually teach the car to see round corners. And rather than go round a bend and be stuck in traffic behind a parked lorry, actually our vehicle is able to change lane before it gets to that situation and really keep that smooth flow.
Automakers and autonomous vehicle software companies have had success developing basic driver assistance functions. But rolling out vehicles that can truly drive themselves has proven more difficult and much more expensive than many had expected. Encountering unexpected situations is among the vehicle's main challenges, as they cannot work out what to do.
And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, I'm Alma Angeles. Thank you all for joining us. Good night.